everybody. My name is Julian, and I am going to be talking about effective instruction in middle school. I do apologize if you hear noises behind me. There's a civics class currently going on, so if you hear something, they're 7th graders. Okay, so first, to talk about effective instruction, we have to figure out what effective instruction is. So I've broken it down to 4 categories that can fall under effective teaching. There can be a lot more in here, but this is the 4 things or 4 topics I'm going to talk about. So the first one is teacher practices. So our teachers, what are they doing in their classrooms? Are they doing it well? That's going to determine how effective their instruction is. So teacher practices are one key point of effective instruction. The second one, results. So what are the teachers accomplishing in their classrooms? How are those student test scores? Are they learning how they're supposed to learn? Are they going to be able to apply that to other things? Second or third is engagement. So obviously if the students are engaged in a lesson, they are going to perform a lot better than students who are not engaged. So we want to create teaching strategies and teach instruction that is going to be engaging for our students. They are going to want to learn and want to be in our classrooms. And lastly, is our instruction relevant? Are the students going to be able to use it? Do they know what it is? Is it relevant to their grade level standards? So I'm going to talk about some effective instruction techniques that we can use in our middle school classrooms to make sure that our students are learning and are able to use what they know and show what they know. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is feedback. So feedback, this means we need to provide clear learning goals. Do students know what they are learning? Are students able to monitor their progress on mastering a learning goal? So to do this, to provide scales and rubrics, we need to show what students are supposed to be able to do at the end of a lesson. So they should know at the end of this lesson, at the end of this unit, I'm going to reach this learning goal. I may not be there yet, but I will get there based on what I'm going to learn in class. Allow them to work with the rubrics, allow them to see the rubrics. Make it clear, it shouldn't be something hidden. They shouldn't have to figure out what they're going to learn. They should know it based on the rubrics. So we're going to provide those scales and rubrics for them. It's not something they should have to look out for. We're going to tell them, this is what you're going to learn, this is how you can figure it out. We're going to track student progress. So those rubrics and scales don't really mean anything if the kids don't know how to work with them, if they don't know how to find where they are on the scale and where they need to be. If they are aware of what changes they need to be, then we can help them get there. And lastly, celebrate success. So if we're going to have students tracking their progress, then we need to celebrate those small victories that those students can make. In middle school, celebrating success means a lot to them because they're knowing that they're learning, and for some of them, it is not necessarily easy to learn. So if we're celebrating those small successes, they're going to want to learn more and keep going. So we have to give them those small goals within a big goal and celebrate the progress they do make to let them know they're on the right track, they can do this, keep going. So this is an example of a rubric or scale using the Marzano method. So this goes 0 to 4, and the verbs used for each level raise with our Bloom's taxonomy. So at the 0 level, which is okay, students start here, we talk about that in our classroom. It's okay to be at a 0. If you're not supposed to know something, you're at a 0. So 0 starts with I need help doing this. So it's going to say like I need help defining this. You look at level 1 and they can define what they need to define. That level 2 is going to be a step up, so they're going to be identifying. Step 3, they're going to be able to start analyzing and demonstrating what they know. And then by that level 4, they're going to do those higher order thinking tasks such as evaluate. One thing that I make sure to do in my classroom to implement this is I give my students a questionnaire on the side, and it lets them think about, so okay, please rate yourself. Whatever you think you are, please rate yourself. And then why did you rate yourself? They should be able to tell you why. And then how are we going to achieve our learning goals? So I'm letting them set personal goals for themselves to help them reach these goals that we're going to have for our classroom. Middle schoolers need to see what they're doing. They need to clearly understand because they're not able to do this on their own yet. Celebrating success. This is something I really enjoy doing in my class. It is simple, easy, and it's something that means a lot to the kids. It can be as simple as giving them a sticker on that rubric sheet. Say, okay, we've rated ourselves again. Where am I? I've made progress. Here's a sticker. Great job. I also like to do high fives, so it can be raise your hand if you made a learning gain today. The kids raise their hands and you say, give someone a high five if they made learning goals. Let's congratulate them because they did what they were supposed to do. They are learning, and that's what we're here to do. Okay, cues and questions. So there are 4 things that you should think about for cues and questions. You need to, number 1, focus on what is important. So this is going to activate prior knowledge for our students, and they will be able to focus on what they need to know next. So if you're focusing on what's important, you're giving them certain aspects of a topic so they know what they need to look for in order to reach those clear learning goals. 2, use explicit cues. For middle schoolers, do not be afraid to say, this is what you're going to learn, or this is what you need to learn. They need those explicit cues, and learning objectives and learning goals are a great way to use cues and questioning to let them know what they're going to learn. Ask inferential questions. So this asks them what they do know, and then if they don't know something, they're going to be able to fill in the blanks. Ask analytical questions. So a lot of our students want to say, oh, I know about that, and they don't want to dig deep or think about it any more than they have to. So if you ask analytical questions, it gets them thinking about the topics that they wouldn't normally think about. You're going to push them past that point, and that's where we're going to get advanced learners. Ways to implement cues and questions. One great way to implement them is bell work. So you could give them a bell work at the beginning of class that asks them a question about the topic, and that could lead to a great discussion about what they're going to learn today. You could also see where your students are at based on how they answered the bell work. 2 is an exit ticket. There's an example on here of a 3-2-1 exit ticket, which is one that I really enjoy using in middle school. So they have to write 3 things they learned today, so that gets them thinking about what they did actually learn in class, 2 things that they found interesting, and 1 question that they still have. So this has them thinking about what they're learning and processing what they did in class, but it's also asking questions to get them to that point. And then a 3rd way is a post-it note activity on the board. So you would write categories on the board, you give each student a post-it note, and as they walk out of the class, they stick it on the whiteboard, whatever category they fall in. So it can say, how did you feel about today's lesson? Great, I felt all right, or I'm struggling. Or it could also be a way to ask a multiple choice question and have students answer it on their way out so you know where they are. So these are 3 ways to ask and implement cues and questions in a classroom without just giving them a question and answer sheet. And this lets them think about thinking and understand where they are. Advanced organizers. So there are 4 types of advanced organizers. I bolded 2 of them because those are the ones that we are going to use most in middle school so far. The first one is expository. So this is, you're going to describe something in a written or verbal form. 2 is a narrative or story format. Middle schoolers love a good story and are going to listen and perk up. 3, skimming, quickly looking over material to gain general impression. You can use skimming when you want students to look at something, but they're not going to look at the text as a whole, and it's a way to get them interested in what they're doing. And then 4, give them a graphic of what they're going to learn, and then they can figure it out from there and make guesses. So, a narrative advanced organizer. So information is presented in a story format. You can read a short story, you can give a video clip, you can tell a personal story, and this is going to produce high engagement for your students. So middle schoolers love talking about themselves. They have a lot going on, and if you give them the opportunity to talk about themselves, they're probably going to use it. So if maybe you could give them a topic and say, does anyone have a personal story about this? And allow them to tell their stories, and then based on that story, you can have a whole class discussion leading into whatever topic you're going to talk about for that day. Same if you have students who are relating to a lesson in some way, maybe let them share that story, and then other students will be able to make those connections to themselves and therefore understand the material better. So you can also just use video clips. If none of your students have a story, you can tell a story. They are still interested in what we have to say sometimes, so you can do that. Skimming. So we do this a lot in language arts, which is the subject that I teach. It allows students to read subheads and points of emphasis, skim the text, looking for clues, and one great example that I use of how to implement in our classrooms is a pre-reading scavenger hunt. So I will give students a handout like this, and it has them look for the title, the author, how many pages, look at headings, and tell me what they think the story is going to be about based on the headings. And they can say whether it's fiction, nonfiction, anything that you can know about a text just from looking at it, skimming it, reading it really quickly, looking at vocab words. Then you have them make guesses of what they think that story is going to be about, or name 3 things they think they're going to learn based on this informational or fiction text. Non-linguistic representations can help our middle schoolers learn and be engaged in learning in our classroom. So these help students understand knowledge at a deeper level and recall it more easily. They have something to put with that information to keep it in their brain. There are 2 types that are great for middle school that I'm going to go over. The first one is graphic organizers. So our kids can be a little unorganized sometimes, or not be sure on how to put all these little thoughts together in one piece of paper, and graphic organizers can help with that. And also engage them in kinesthetic activities. So they are full of energy, they need to get up out of their desks, so give them activities that get them up, get those neural networks moving, and get them thinking and engaged in your lesson. And that's when your teaching is going to be effective. So there are many graphic organizers. There's actually 6 types. So there's descriptive, time sequence, process, cause and effect, episode, generalization or principle, and concept. Graphic organizers are going to be great in any subject area, and it's just really going to allow students to break down information, know where to put what. You can use it for essays, you can use it for stories, you can use it for science, any way for kids to know where to put information and how to store it without having to worry about doing their notes wrong. So graphic organizers are going to lead their way through a lesson, and they can be more focused on what they're learning and less worried about doing something wrong and not knowing how to take notes or not being able to keep up. Kinesthetic activities. So when students move around, they create more neural networks, and therefore they're going to remember that knowledge and recall it easier, and it's going to stay with them longer. So we're going to engage students with activities that get them up and moving. So examples, you can have a common activity, a gallery walk, or even act out vocabulary words. So these are ways to get students up out of their desks and moving around to engage with that information, help it stay with them longer. So as a language arts teacher, it can be kind of hard to figure out ways to get them up out of their desks. So maybe have them work on grammar with putting different parts of a sentence on, have them up standing, and make it a challenge to get them to reorder themselves so that they make the sentence properly. So I did that with commas. So I gave each student a necklace to wear that had a sign of a part of a sentence, either a word or a comma or punctuation, and they had to figure out what the sentence meant and then line up and organize themselves based on where the comma should go. And they found that really interesting in grammar, which is something it's kind of hard to get middle schoolers to be interested in. A gallery walk, where you put your pictures around the room and have them walk around to get information. Or you could even have them act out vocabulary words that they don't know, figure out the meaning, and then act it out for the class to guess. Just anything that's going to get them up out of their seats, engaged in learning, and having a great time with information that they wouldn't normally know. All right, similarities and differences. So strategies for middle school, we can compare, so we can use Venn diagrams in our class to get them to look at similarities and differences. We can classify, so we can organize items into different groups, help them put things in a group. They have to know why it goes there. We can use similes and metaphors to help students make sense of information. This is focusing on how things are similar and how things are different on an abstract level, not just this is this and this is this. And then you can see where students are on a topic if you have them doing something like a Venn diagram or writing out those things. Lastly, you can have them do analogies. So similarities between things that seem dissimilar on the surface. This is going to be one that you won't see as much in middle school because it could be challenging for them to understand that concept. So those are some of my effective teaching techniques for middle school.